Hey, I'm new to 3D printing. A couple of months now, but I have a great deal of experience with mechanics, maintenance, engineering, CAD drawing, a lot of different things. I got a wide variety of experiences and background. So I just wanted to put together a little list of things that I've been searching for, and go-to advice on 3D printing is not that easy to find. You can find some wrong information too if you're not careful. So, just a couple of things that I thought were like the most important. So, number one, before you upgrade your firmware, uh, be sure you know the information on your machine. It's not a huge deal because you can't really brick these things as far as I can tell. But it makes things real frustrating. I pulled my hair out for the last 2 days now after upgrading my Ender 3 Max Neo with the Sprite 300th degree hot end. And basically, the bed leveler, Creality doesn't really support their own products. There's a real mess on what's in things. And with the shortage on chips, they've changed. And I got the GD chip, let's call it you know what that stands for. So it's the crappy chip. Although I did get the firmware upgraded from the Creality website and did save myself from a pile of trouble, I had to change a few things in my Cura slicer settings for offsetting the nozzle and the probe because there's nowhere on the machine to set up any offsets for that. So as of right now, I'm not using bed leveling. I have been messing with it in the firmware, but I haven't got it all sorted out just yet. What happens, it comes out here to the edge, my nozzle hits on the bed, and I'm afraid it's going to snap the glass, so I'm not bothering for right now. The new Creality software or firmware seems to be working really good. So, next on the list, if you have the GD chip, get your firmware from Creality until you see something on GitHub or Marlin where it says that it's absolutely 100% safe, that it works, because there's not much telling you don't do it, because it works on every other machine as far as I can tell, but not the ones with the GD chip. So next, keep your cards, your SD cards, keep them separate. The data settings from your slicer and from the printer are stored on your SD cards, and if you mess up your cards, you can mess up a printer. It can cause some serious troubles printing off the edge. For example, I have an Ender 3 Max here. It's a 3 Max Pro. It parks up on the front end. This one here is the Max Neo. It parks center of the build. So if you mix up those cards and you mix up your slicer settings, you're going to have this one here starting over on the far corner and printing the corner. And this one over here, funny as it sounds, does the same thing. Just anyway, more things on with the list. There's a lot to cover. So the Sprite extruder update and updates from Creality. Do your homework on them first. They're usually pretty simple to upgrade, but all of the features with your printer might not work without a huge headache or fixing things yourself afterwards. Every printer you get, these are not set right up. Even if you got one totally pre-assembled and supposedly just plug it in and go, no. Check it over. Check all the bearings, check all the rollers, check all the belt tensions, check everything. I've had them and I thought I checked everything, and next thing you know, I've had a gap on the Bowden tube and plastic builds up there. It starts pouring out through, and you won't notice it until next thing you know it's coming out through the silicone on the bottom of your extruder, and you got a catastrophe on your hand. I lost a thermistor the other day from one. Normally it's not a huge deal, you can save it. I've got all my tubes now upgraded to the Capricorn tube. They're a little tougher for the heat and stuff, and of course the bigger Ender Max there has got the direct drive, so it can go hotter anyway, and it doesn't have a tube. Don't have to worry about the melt, so that's great. Next on the list, formatting your cards and your SD cards. I believe that the Enders will take up to a 64 gig. Don't bother. 32 gig works. 64 gig, you can't get it to work. Issues from anyone that I've talked to or heard about, they're glitchy at best. 32 gig or less works. Never had a problem with any of them. In your prints, if it's something important, if it's something very delicate, if it's something that's sitting finicky on the build plate, use a brim, use some kind of support. There's a ton of really good videos for supports. I like Chep and Filament Friday. I think when it comes to infills, supports, and the technical information, he's right there with it. 3D Print Scrape got some great information for firmware and stuff. He really helped me through things unknowingly, but yeah, helped me through a lot of stuff. So I'd use Z-Hop, Avoid Parts, and definitely check out some of the infill tricks from Filament Friday, especially the infill doubler lines and changing the infill in different sections of your print. Man, very useful. Definitely worth the watch. The type of printer to buy. There's tons of them out there now, and I've been looking for probably years before I even bought one. The price was pretty crazy, and it's come down in price now, and they're affordable. But I think bang for a buck, go with an Ender. I mean, they're full of problems, but they're reliable. There's a lot of people making money and running businesses from them. There's a lot of upgrades. You can get extender kits, hot end kits, and closers, everything, and it's pretty darn cheap. There's a learning process to this, no doubt, but I think anybody can handle it. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take you. I had a good background. I've been doing it quick, but I'm totally immersed. I think the Ender 3 Max or 6E or the Ender 3 V2S1 Pro, I mean, they got a lot of good machines. There's a lot of other ones out there. Tons of them. Artillery, Bamboo Lab. I mean, the market is just flooded with them. If you got a ton of money, hey, go out and buy yourself a metal 3D printer or Markforged, or get the Hooper. But for us that don't have tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, get yourself an Ender 3 and learn something. There's a lot to learn. You might think you can know it all, even if you got a good history of coding, computers, CAD. You might think you know it all. Try it. You'll see there's a sharp learning curve. When recycling your scrap, all your cut ends and pieces, I find use for them so much. Heat them up with a little torch to fill in gaps and holes here and there. almost never have a failed print. You might see a lot of aluminum tape around my shop. I use it for a lot of stuff. It's rigid. It helps to make good support for your plastic, and it's saved a lot of prints for me. Where really I can just take my next best tool to have, the 3D printing pen, and the cheap kids doodler or whatever one. I mean, they all work really good. I find this one is really good though. It retracts. It stops when you want it to stop. The doodler, it's a little hit and miss, but they do work good. Do have them here. Anyway, next with the list. The recycled scrap. Yeah, molding them, heating them up. You can't put them through the doodler, but you can heat little pieces with the end of the doodler with a torch. You can fill gaps behind with your scrap and then use the doodler to finish it, and then a soldering gun with a spoon or a spatula end to really iron or smoothen it out. You can also use an iron with some parchment paper or wax paper behind it. Makes a nice smooth finish, especially on something good flat. So my recycled scraps, I use them, press them, melt them into molds. They work well for all kinds of stuff. Okay, moving quick. MEK, awesome, great stuff. Helps for cleaning your glass boards. You give them a wipe if you got glue or something on it to help something stick down, although you don't really need it. Glass boards and PEI, everything sticks really well. Keep them clean. Keep them clean. The PEI plates, the PLA sticks like super good. It's a bit hard to get them off. Not the easiest, but they do come off. Stick to a skirt. You wouldn't want to use brim or anything real thin to spread the plate. That's not the one to be doing level checks with the squares or anything. Not in my opinion anyway. Glass, real nice, real easy. Soon as it's nice and cool, peels off good, and if you keep that plate clean, it grabs on tight. It won't lose as long as you got some bed heat there, and when it's done, just peels off. Give it a quick wipe with some alcohol, and best kind. If you do use some kind of glue stick or something for bed adhesion, use MEK, use some kind of heavier solvent to clean it all off. That stuff will build up in the pores of the glass and it'll be a nightmare. Nothing will stick. It'll start holding down bits of different types of materials. Just doesn't work good. Printed upgrades. If you want to do them, that's great. Some of them make your printer look really good. I bought this Neo with a pile of them on it, and I printed off, my company, and a couple of little embellishments. I made springs and little track fills, but really, it's kind of a waste of time. For the most part, when you're checking over your printer, just watch that everything is tight and smooth, runs efficiently, and that your cables and stuff don't bind or rub. What I like to do is pull my cables for the Z out through the side, if you can see that, and the Y out the back here. That way they can never cross or bind up on each other. If you run them on top of the enclosure part, they can rub against each other, and they can even bind if they cross over. CAD software, for me, that's a no-brainer. I've played around with them all, but Blender, I like Blender for the versatility of it and being free. It's the go-to, I think. There's a lot of other good ones out there. Fusion is touted to be the best, and my experience going through school, AutoCAD and Autodesk was the way you went all through my career of drafting was AutoCAD, Autodesk, but I'm going with Blender. That's my pick. Slicer, I think, is absolute most important thing. You got your printer profiles, your printer settings, and it fixes almost all your problems. You got wisping, you got things falling, you got things not strong enough, taking too long. These can all be addressed with the slicer. I haven't had a lot of experience with a bunch of different slicers. I've only tried a couple. Cura is the most popular one from my experience, and what I'm using is Cura. So that has worked for me immensely. Trimming things, if you got some crappy STLs, and that's another thing, things from online, Thingiverse, stuff like that, there's a lot of crappy STLs and crappy files. They're just not set up to print. Somebody's just drawn and cool design, but it's not printable. Have a look at them, use some common sense, lay things flat, roll them around, adjust them. I like to do a lot of that in Cura. I find it's simple, it's easy, and when it comes down to it, I line things up so that they're half close in Blender, possibly, or just take it right into Cura, and I'll drop it down on the Z a little bit. That cuts the bottom off. Boom, print it, no problem. At least it's gonna all be on the build plate, and you don't want things starting, everything's printing here, and then you got something starting up here. It'll just be tumbleweeds, plastic tumbleweeds. Alright, I think that's pretty well the end of my go-to list of stuff. I'm super excited. I've been having a lot of fun with this. I think possibilities are endless. And then the things I'm after printing, tools, jigs, the ingenious minds of people that are out there thinking things up. And I believe I got a bunch of good ideas myself to add to the community, but man, amazing. Like NASA mesh, I printed off a couple of my own designs, hole finders. I mean, there's print in place bearings. You got articulated parts, the kids' toys and stuff that I printed off from other people's designs with like dragons and take these joints and make other things from them. They're awesome. This is another really cool contraption. So these are just plastic locked together joints. I can't remember the name of them. I'm sorry. But if it's the top layer, you put a cap in. If it's not the top layer, you have a hole. And you just screw this little friction locking nut and it all comes apart. So you can put a piece of board in here, a shelf. You got shelf liners to go along to keep things from sliding off the shelf. They're in your trim, you stick them in here, and they're awesome. Stackable. Tighten one up here, middle of it, tighten one up the top, instant shelf. Workbench, instant. Like, it takes about 2 or 3 minutes to grab a piece of cardboard or a board, and I got a shelf here in my little shop. And the possibilities are pretty well endless with this stuff. One more thing too, actually. I really like those lithophane. I think they're a really cool little print. Lots of little ideas for them. I've been using them as diffusers and behind mirrors. And I'll put these light tracks on them and put the lithophanes in front of them. I mean, hard to tell there, but you get some really good print quality with pretty well a standard print. Sure, if you step up in the quality, the print is a little better, but I think unless you're going with a large size and something that somebody's going to pay some money for, go with the standard print. It prints so much quicker, and the quality is there. It really looks pretty good. And bang for a buck. This is costing you money, and so you got to make some money. So You know, I think that is pretty awesome, and that is a standard. Just point two. So that's pretty well it. Oh yeah, one more thing. When you're planting something clear, that's the only time I would use spiralize, the contour thing for the slicer. Is the only time it's any good. Also, if you ever got to do, like I'm doing this DJ helmet thing here, and I've modified it a little, but it's pretty well the standard disco helmet STL from Thingiverse, and but I made my own parts for it. And what I've done is I take the visor part, instead of printing the round visor, which is too thick and you can't see through it. What I do is I measure the area of the piece that I want. I'll put that as a flat pane on my printer. I'll up the fill on the print and adjust the extrusion rate so that it's to at least 110. I find actually 110 kind of doesn't fill perfectly. So as an example, we got a little piece here that failed, and this was at 110, and it started working good, and it probably would have worked out fine if the bed was totally level, but it was a little bit lower on one side than the other. And although when I first peeled this off it looked like a success, like a good sheet, when it came off it all came like this. So that's what I do. One layer, print it, cut it to size, and I mean, molding plastic afterwards is so easy. Throw the heat gun to it. A heat gun is another tool that's like almost a go-to. You need to have it. A heat gun, an ultrasonic tool, a Dremel tool, and I find a hair dryer works really well too, to keep some heat. Longer pieces, as you can see, replacing lenses and lights and things like this, and you can get 3 and 4 feet long, and you want to keep the heat consistent across it. You need a couple, so I keep a couple of hair dryers, and I'll set them up on stands on each end, and I'll use the heat gun and run that across, and it just gives you a wider area of heat rather than having an industrial oven, which I can't afford and don't have room for anyway. So I hope you learned something from this. I wish somebody had a video similar to this so that I would have known exactly what to look for. The filament thing, the firmware, and the keeping the cards and the slicer settings to the printer, huge, and you don't hear enough about it from the people making videos and the guys doing these professional ones. Because I don't have the effects or backgrounds. All I got's this pretty face and a good smile, but hopefully you learned something. Hopefully this works for you, and a lot of these guys saved me, so I'm thinking I'd like to give a shout out to a couple of the different channels that I've been watching. So Zach Friedman, every filament video was awesome, excellent. Technivorous, same thing, filament, very informative. Crosslink, you got some good stuff there, especially for technical things, 3D scanning. He's got a lot of things that you wouldn't really think about but tie in. He's good stuff. Maker, teaching tech, really good. The way he does it is so simplified. It's like 3D printing for dummies. And I'm not saying that it's dumbed down, but he explains things so that a kid could learn from it. Very simple. 3D Printscape, he's a bit bland, but I mean, he got knowledge. He knows what he's talking about. And when it comes to firmware and stuff, great. BV3D. I like the guy. I think he's got some character. He's obviously with the technical side of it, the firmware and things like that. He's up with coding and that kind of stuff. I liked it. And of course, Chuck with Filament Friday. And I mean, it's endless, endless. I've been watching so many videos lately. You guys are pioneers, and there's lots of really cool stuff happening now that I think is going to change the world. This is like Star Trek days. We got replicators in our house now. I feel like I can make anything. Make it. Later. Mobile Maintenance Manufacturing. Vince out.